Korte Tree Care has been in business in central Missouri for about 9 years, and to learn more about it, we're going to listen to the founder and owner here, Josh Korte. Josh, first of all, give us a little background on how and when you got this company started.
Well, it was part-time when I went to MU, and when I graduated, it was a size where I could continue going full-time, so instead of getting a job, I just continued on with it. That was in December of 2000. And it's all I've done since then, and it's grown over the years with our family and more employees. The origin of it when I was 14. I would work with my uncle in the summer. He had a tree service, and so it was a family trade, and it was a comfortable thing to do when I came to Columbia in 1997. And it expanded. It was limited while I was in school, but as soon as I got out and became full-time, the business is as big as we want it to be.
Well, tell me about the business. It's a tree service, but what are the services that you offer?
Well, we do a lot of tree trimming, pruning, shaping, not topping, but we do a lot of dead wood removal. I would say a third or maybe even a half of what we do is remove dead trees or hazard trees. We don't plant, but I do consult with people, and I'll recommend trees they can plant. We grind stumps out, and we'll remove the stump mulch and fill it in with soil and prepare it for planting of a tree, and then I'll advise them on what to plant. We consult on treatment of trees. I don't do the chemical treating, but I'll advise people on what they should do. But I stick to the pruning, the shaping, the removal if necessary, and we kind of specialize on hazard trees or larger trees. Although we do jobs that only take 20 or 30 minutes if people want. It's kind of whatever they need.
Well, you are in the central Missouri area. How far will you go, or how big is your territory?
We often go to West County, St. Louis. I'd say often. We're probably there once every 2 months. We go down to Steelville, Cuba, and Rolla fairly often because I have family down there. But most of the time we're within a 50-mile radius. We're in Jeff City and Columbia every single week. We go as far as Mexico, Missouri, Callaway County, down to the lake quite a bit, often in Osage and Gasconade County, Montauk. It's kind of a circle that goes from California down to the lake, over to the edge of Gasconade County, through Fulton, Mexico, Moberly, lots of times in Booneville, but most of the time we're in Columbia and Jefferson City and southern Boone County.
So you mentioned that there are even some jobs that may only take a few minutes, but what's kind of an example of the biggest job you've taken on?
Well, the biggest size-wise, I think the biggest tree you're going to find in central Missouri is 80 or 100 feet tall, and I think the biggest one that I ever took out was 6 or 7 feet in diameter at the base. And there's lots of trees that are that big at the bottom, but it was probably 80 or 100 feet tall. But the largest jobs I've done are where there's a series of trees like that, and probably Lincoln University had one of the biggest jobs we've ever had. But if you get someone with 3 or 4 trees that size, it's going to take several days to do it. But as far as trees go, they max out. There's a limit to how big they can get in our soil. Usually they'll be in a bottom or somewhere where there's really rich soil. There'll be something that you have to use a crane for.
Now, as far as the equipment that you use, want to describe the type of equipment and how that allows you to do your job, and I will mention the word safety in here. Do it safely too.
Sure. Well, the basic equipment, you have chainsaws and all kinds of little gear, ropes and pulleys and things for rigging. But most of the time we're in a bucket truck. There's a man. It's an aerial lift, and you have a full body harness that attaches to the bucket. So that way the operator can operate separate from the tree. So if the tree fails or if the tree's dead, dangerous, a man isn't in the tree. And if something happens, it happens separate from him. So he's in the aerial lift, he has a chainsaw or a pruning pole or a pole saw, and we go up and do trimming with that. And then the debris on the ground generally gets sent through a chipper. And that stuff, anything up to 20 inches in diameter, gets run through the chipper, so we have chips. And they get recycled into mulch. They wind up in people's yards, and they decay in the soil. And then beyond that, if it takes more than that, we'll operate the aerial lift separate. The chipper will have its own chip truck if there's a lot of material. And then you get to, on the larger jobs, especially ones beyond 60 feet tall or where the base is huge, we use a crane. And that lets us pick branches in the air that are really hazardous, if they're over a building or over some kind of structure or monument or memorial, you can pick them up and move them over and not have to cut them in little pieces and have a man handle all those individual things. Or if it's so dead or rotten that a man can't physically climb out that far onto the limb, you can have a crane pick it up and he can cut it from a safe place. And then the crane, if you have larger material, if you have a trunk that's 5 or 6 feet across, the crane will pick it up instead of cutting slices and dropping it in the yard and having them roll around or roll into things. And then we have a little lift, a sky lift that goes 40 feet high, and it'll go in backyards and places like that. And we use that a lot on really dangerous dead trees that are in a place where you can't get a truck or a boom, but you also can't climb, and so we'll use that little lift. It's really easy on yards, has lawnmower tires, rolls around, goes to a 36-inch gate, and that's been really handy. And it makes pruning a lot more affordable in backyards. You can clean dead wood out of a tree and not have to climb around in it. It's easier on the tree, it's easier on the men, it's safer. It's a lot safer. And beyond that, we have other skid steers and trailers and different specialized things for land clearing. A hydro axe, which can shear off 20 or 30-inch trees, pick them up and lay them all in a pile. You can clear fields with it, or it's got a giant brush hog attachment that'll shred stuff. I think it shreds things up to 7, 8, 9, 10 inches in diameter, but it'll clear out a field of cedars and things like that, and you can clear right-of-ways with it.
Well, while we're talking here, people are watching one of your jobs. You mentioned, I think, the Lincoln University.
Right.
Tell us about this project that we're watching.
That was an American elm tree, and it looked healthy in the top. Usually they get Dutch elm disease at some point and they die. But that tree was alive, although it was starting to go into decline. But when you looked at the base, I think 40 or 50% of the base was rotten. And that meant that it didn't have roots on one side. The side that's rotten, it doesn't have any material to go down and grow into roots. And so as big as it was and near the buildings and right above a walkway, at some point the strong wind would have come from the west and blown it over. So even though it looked green, it had to go. And it wasn't the tallest of trees, but it was in a spot with a walkway, a little phone booth, and all kinds of other obstacles underneath it. So we had to use a crane to pick it out. And that one we could get a crane to it, but we couldn't get an aerial lift. And so I had to climb in it and rig up the cables and then cut it as it was. And it was big. I forget the diameter. That might have been 5 or 6 feet at the bottom. And some of the stuff I cut was a couple feet in diameter. They're a lot bigger when you're in them than they are when you look at them from the outside. And so it was an unseen hazard, really.
Well, if people want to get in touch and find out what it would take to do some work for them, how would they get in touch with you?
We have a website, KorteTreeCare.com, which is where you'll be watching this video. And we have a couple phone numbers, one for Jefferson City area people, southern Boone County, Hartsburg, and south, and that's 573-632-8733. And then there's a phone number for Ashland and Columbia and farther north, Booneville and those areas, and that's 573-875-1999.
All right, well, thank you very much. That's Josh Korte, Korte Tree Care. He told you how you can get in touch with him, and of course I think we'll probably have the phone number on this video as well.